Hello, I'm Matt Deemery, a meteorologist here at the National Weather Service office in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and this is your 2025 Monsoon Outlook for central northern New Mexico. First off, what is the North American monsoon? Well, monsoon literally means change in wind direction. We typically see westerly winds overhead during most of the season, but during the monsoon season, which runs from roughly June 15th to the end of September, we see high pressure build overhead, and that allows moisture to come in from the south and in from the east, providing the fuel for afternoon thunderstorms around the area. What hazards do we have during the monsoon season? Well, kind of a little bit of everything. Heat waves are not uncommon at all, particularly starting around this time of year. And we actually have our first heat wave coming up this weekend into early next week, where temperatures are going to be pushing 100 degrees in Albuquerque and potentially higher than that in the Roswell area. Wildfires are not uncommon, particularly during the beginning of the year when we could have dry lightning and we're getting out of the very typically dry spring. There could be strong winds that help to grow those wildfires, but that becomes less of a concern once the rain comes later in the season. Downburst winds and dust storms can occur with storms during the season, as well as hail, lightning, and of course flash flooding, which is of particular concern over the recent burn scars, the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon, and the Sacramento complex of scars in the Ruidoso area, but really anywhere in the state can see flash flooding if we get heavy enough rainfall. One of the things we use to track the monsoon is the dew point temperature. Dew point temperature is a measure of the moisture in the atmosphere. And this plot here shows the dew point temperature for the 2024 season compared to the long-term average, or the climatology, which is the red line. So as you can see, we typically see an increase in moisture during July, and particularly the end of July through August, where we consistently have dew points over 47 degrees. Why is 47 degrees considered this threshold line? Well, typically when we have over that, we have enough moisture in the atmosphere that we will see widespread storms around the state. Doesn't mean that with less than that we can't see that, but it is kind of the delineation between the drier periods that we can get where the dew point drops below 40 or 30, and these wetter periods where we can get dew points up into the 50s and even low 60s, where we see a lot of storms that can go well on into the nighttime hours. But there's a lot of variation. It's not the same thing every day. We see a lot of variation throughout the monsoon season, and so the dew point tracker helps us to visualize that. You can find that on our website at the link that I have here. I know we used to put it on the front page, but it's since been moved. So if you want to see that and track the monsoon season, go to that link. Moving on to our drought. It's uncommon for us to see severe, even exceptional drought conditions during the early summer months before we head into the monsoon season. So, and this year is no different. We have severe to even exceptional drought conditions in the southwestern portion of the state. Fortunately, we've had a pretty wet May and early June in the eastern plains, and so we've actually removed a lot of the drought from those areas. But in central and western New Mexico, it's still been very dry. And so we have those drought conditions, but fortunately, we tend to see those alleviated once we get the daily afternoon rounds of storms that come during July and August. What is an average monsoon here in New Mexico? So we have average precipitation for that June 15th through September 31st time period here in the right image. And if you're savvy with topography in New Mexico, you'll notice that the higher precipitation amounts tend to occur where there's mountains. And that's not a coincidence. We tend to see the first storms of the day fire up over the mountains during the late morning, early afternoon hours. And then those storms build, and then they move off into the lower elevations during the afternoon, often weakening as they do so. And so the mountains are where we get the most precipitation, some places up to 18 inches on average, meaning that in a high-end monsoon year, we can see over 2 feet in some of those areas. And lower elevations tend to see much less precipitation, 3 to 8 inches on average or so for areas like Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Eastern New Mexico is a little bit of exception to that. There's no mountains out there, but they do get a lot of precipitation, and that's because they can get these backdoor cold front intrusions that lead to these large clusters of storms that can develop out there. But I also wanted to note that the distribution of precipitation can and will vary significantly from year to year. So this is average, but I can guarantee you that this is not exactly what the precipitation is going to look like at the end of the season. There's going to be areas that get more than average, some areas get less than average, some areas that are right around average. That's just the nature of the monsoon. On to the outlook for this season. So, this is the official temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center for the July through September time period. And they're saying that there's a 60 to 70% chance for above average temperatures and a less than 10% chance that the temperatures are below average. So, pretty high confidence there that we will see above average temperatures, and that means we will have heat waves and we will have deadly heat waves. Heat is the number one killer during the monsoon season. So, sometimes the flooding and the hail and the lightning, the more flashy things can get a lot of the attention, but heat really is one of the more deadly aspects of this time of year, and so it's good to be aware of that. Now, for the precipitation outlook, the Climate Prediction Center is indicating that there's an equal chance for near, above, and below average precipitation for essentially the entirety of New Mexico. The exception to that is the far northeast corner of the state, where there's a slight lean towards below average precipitation, but in general, there's really no clear signal in the climate models right now. And so what this means is we're probably going to end up with a season where some areas are below average, some are above, and some are right near average. There are some indications from some climate models that July and September could have some wet periods where we have these monsoonal surges of moisture. So that'll be something we keep an eye on. But really, it's going to probably be a season where it really varies from week to week what kind of storm coverage we're getting because there is no clear signal there. So if this did not quench your thirst and you want to know more about the North American monsoon, check out the official monsoon season outlook for central northern New Mexico. At this link, it goes much deeper into what the climate models are showing, into what the effects are of El Nino and La Nina on the monsoon season. And so if you want to get more details, definitely check that out on our website. We also have the dew point tracker that's available. You can track the dew point all season long. And of course, our main website, weather.gov/ABQ, where we will always have graphics there highlighting the concerns of the day. So whether that's heat or gusty winds or flash flooding, we'll keep you posted on the main hazard of the day there. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us at our webmaster account. Thank you for listening.